say there's...
Welcome, everyone. There we go. Now it kicked in. Kevin and I are ready. Another video, tax-free savings accounts. We're talking about how to avoid penalties with your TFSA. You definitely want to stick around.
Yes, one question we tend to get a lot of all the times is, how much do I have left to contribute into my TFSA each year? This is a very important scenario. The government sets out a certain amount, but if you haven't always contributed the same way, there may be more or less that you actually have on it, things you have to take a look at. Now, if you want to find out more on this video or any of the others, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Quick, simple, easy to get done. Lots of great content on there. Or you can like us on Facebook, and most importantly, again, go to our website at beckerorr.com. Blogs, videos, lots of information, really help you with your financial scenario. But today what we're doing is how to avoid penalties on your TFSA. People get them regardless of what people think. And when they do, they're always shocked as to what comes on. So let's describe sort of that whole scenario as to how to avoid the penalty. But first, I think, Clint, what is a TFSA?
Yeah, we got to start with a quick review. Then I'll go over the penalty, how the penalties get charged and occurred, and what you can do to avoid them, more importantly. But first off, TFSA started in 2009. Anyone over the age of 18 with a valid SIN can open a TFSA as long as they're a Canadian resident. Contribution limit, it's changed over the years, but right now, 2022, you're looking at $6,000 per year. You don't lose your contribution room, so if you don't do the full contribution in a given year, it does carry forward, it does accumulate. Since 2009, there's been a total accumulation of $81,500 of total TFSA contribution room. Wide selection of investments, Kevin. You can put pretty much anything you can put in an RSP, stocks, bonds, alternative investments. You can put that inside of a TFSA. Of course, no tax deferred growth, right? So if you're in 5%, 10%, whatever you earn, you don't pay any tax on that. You can withdraw the funds. You can do that at any time without tax consequence. And this is where it can get a little tricky. You take the money out, you can put it back in, but you have to wait until the next calendar year before you regain that contribution room. I did that quickly, but it's a quick review of the TFSA, some of the key items there. And that leads us to this, Kevin, the penalty if you put too much into that account.
Yes, basically what the government has come out and said is they don't want you to continue, take money out one year, put it right back in. You're automatically over-contributing. You do that in the same calendar year. And what happens is if you do over-contribute, it's a 1% penalty per month. Each month, you are over your limit. So if you're assessed a penalty, of course, what can happen is you can go to CRA and say, well, I didn't realize this or I didn't realize that. And can you please, if it's a reasonable scenario, withdraw that penalty so I don't have to pay it. And of course, we know that CRA doesn't waive it. And theoretically, you can go to court on it. And we'll talk about more on that later. But again, the biggest factor to realize is that if you do over-contribute, you will be penalized on this because the government has set out strict government regulations for how much can be contributed each year and how much over-contribution, well, not over-contribution, or how much you may not have contributed beforehand can go in the same year. When withdrawals come out, you can't touch that until the next calendar year. So it's very important to know what your limits are. Otherwise, you may get charged.
Absolutely. In CRA, they don't have to waive it. It's a subjective. No. It's up to them, right? So you can ask them and they can say no, and then you can take them to court. But let's try to avoid that whole scenario. So we're going to go through a couple of pieces here. In the first one, you already hit on it. You need to know your limit. You need to know how much room you have left. The best way to avoid the fee, just put the right amount in the account. Don't go over. Once you go over, that 1% per month starts adding up on the excess contribution, and it can end up being a big number. One element that a lot of folks use, Kevin, is the My Account feature of CRA. I use it. It's quite handy. You log in, it's got all your tax details there, including your TFSA contribution limits. But this is important. That account, specifically as it relates to TFSA, it is not updated in real time. I add to my TFSA, that number is still going to be the same on the website. It's delayed. It lags. It is not updated in real time. I'll pull this up here, Kevin, so you can walk us through and explain how does that My Account feature of CRA actually get updated?
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, everybody's got to remember that the TFSA updates that the government gets, it's very similar to if you're getting a T-slip. I mean, you do not get your T-slip January 1 of the next year to tell you how much you've earned. This has all been added up. You may get it in February. You may get it at the end of March. TFSA is the same way. CRA has to get all that information from the financial institutions for what has been contributed to your account over the course of the year. And basically, the financial institutions have till the end of February before they have to give that to CRA. So if they're not getting it until the end of February, chances are it's not being updated on their website until maybe the middle to end of April. So if you're looking in February and it says that, you've got an extra 10 grand you can contribute, hold on a second here. That's not updated data probably. You should wait a little longer if you don't know. If you know that you've contributed every year properly and then you can do the new amount, you're probably safe to put it in right at the beginning of the year. But if you do not, remember, CRA's updated TFSA site is not updated day one. It is going to take a number of months before you get there.
Absolutely. And that's the key, right? If I go to the CRA website and say, hey, it says I got 10 grand, I'm going to plop that in. I could be over contributing. And now I got a penalty and I got a whole situation I got to deal with. And keep in mind, when you put the money in and if it's over the limit, you don't get an immediate response. It could take them a year before they tell you you've over contributed, but that 1% per month penalty starts occurring the second you're over. So you could put it in, start accruing that penalty, and you might not even know about it for a while. And it just saves you a lot of hassle if you can do it up front. So keep in mind that My Account through CRA not updated in real time. There is a lag. Usually it's kind of that April time period in our experience before you see a fully updated TFSA contribution list on that CRA My Account. So we'll go through a quick example here, Kevin, to show how that can turn into a penalty and how people can avoid it here. So we have Joan, our hypothetical individual. Why don't you walk us through the example?
Yeah, I mean, basically, if we assume that she opened it, I was over the age of 18 in 2009, contributed every year to 2019, the maximum, and Joan has $9,000 a room for 2019. If in January of 2020 she earns another $6,000 a room, then total would be the $9,000 she hasn't contributed before, plus the $6,000 is going to give her $15,000. Now, Joan does that contribution of $6,000 in January, and in November, having come into some money, she adds another $9,000. So she's actually done the $15,000 that she can do in 2020. But again, checking the first month in 2021, of course, it's going to say that she has a new $6,000. Plus, they don't know that she's contributed $15,000 over the course of the year because her financial institution hasn't given that information. So she says she's got $21,000. Well, great. If you haven't been keeping track, if you put that $21,000 in, you're going to have the $6,000. That's fine. But the other $15,000, you're now $15,000 over contributed. And so she will have contributed an extra $15,000, which if she does it in January, as we can see from the numbers right here, that $15,000 in January is going to start to accrue interest 1% every month starting in January. So if she doesn't find out until, say, today that she's got the slip, well, now you're dealing with 18 months at 1% a month on $15,000. That can add up fairly huge. And that's the same thing. Just as looking here, she had 9, she got 6, contribution in 2020, 15, contribution at the end of the room, 0, new 6, 21 contributed. As we see, the big red number is the one you have to worry about.
Exactly. So the key here is at the end of 2021, end of 2020 in our example, she didn't have any contribution room. She used it all up. So she got 6,000 new contribution room in January, but the site wasn't updated. It did not know she made that $15,000 contribution the prior year. So she ended up doing it again. And now you can see you get that big red number. Now you over contributed and now you started accruing a penalty. And we're not taking this out of thin air. There was actually a case recently in BC where lots of details of that case, lots of nuance, but this was kind of the crux of the issue. Is the individual in that case looked at the CRA website. It said they had room. They did that early in the year. So before this update we're talking about, early in the year, they contributed based on that information. They over contributed. They eventually get a letter from CRA saying they have this penalty. They went to CRA and said, hey, I used your website. It told me I had the room. I put that amount of money in. I got this penalty. Can you waive the fee? CRA said no. And then she took them to court. And the judge sided with CRA and said it was perfectly reasonable for them to charge that penalty. It's up to the taxpayer to know their TFSA limits. That is the key here, that you can't just depend on the CRA website and say, oh, it wasn't updated, I'm in the clear. We have a case that just happened, this one in BC, where it shows that's not going to happen. At least it didn't happen in this case. They still had to pay the fine, pay the penalty, even though they were relying on the CRA website.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as we say, the biggest factor is that you're not automatically going to be notified when you over contribute. This is something that takes a while for it to go through the government system. So 18 months, 2 years later after the contribution, if it comes out, that's a possibility. And remember, you are paying interest from day one. It's not once you get your notice, we're going to start charging you interest here. No, we're charging you from day one. So in our example there, I mean, doing the math, I mean, $150 a month for 18 months, the numbers are not small by the time it gets there. And that can be a fairly heavy tax burden that has to be paid. And as we've seen here in the BC case, they're going to make you pay it possibly. You might get it waived, but chances are government's going to say, no, sorry, your responsibility to look after, you're owed this much money.
Yeah, the government doesn't have to waive it. It's subjective, right? And in the case we just talked about that happened in BC, they didn't waive it. They went to court and the judge said, yep, they don't have to waive it. So you have to know your limits. And we're just trying to point out nothing wrong with relying on the My Account feature of CRA.
Nope.
I rely on it, but you just need to know when it's updated, right? So if you're not sure, you've been putting some money in, you took money out, it's a little more complicated, simply wait until April, wait until May, then you'll know the numbers for sure. It's all updated and you'll have the good information on which to make your decision, right? So you just have to know how those get updated so that you can adjust your plan accordingly and avoid any penalties on your TFSA.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And again, if you want more information on this topic or anything dealing with the TFSA scenario or other items in the financial sector, please give us a call, or not a call, go to chatwithclintonandkevin.com. Leave us your questions there. We'd be more than happy to answer them. You can always call us as well. We're around for those sort of phone calls. But again, this is one quick way to get through it. And again, we wanted to talk about how to avoid penalties in your TFSA. Do make sure you're checking the site, but do make sure that you know when the updating happens.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. We'll be back again soon with another video.